Overtaking some cyclists. 3, 2, 1. Wow. I mean, to get acceleration like this from a conventional car, you need a 4 litre, wouldn't you? It's crazy, really. Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome back. Well, today I'm in this Audi Q4 e-tron, which I've been using for the past week. This is an all-electric battery EV, which has been on sale since 2021. The Q4 is built on the MEB platform, which is the underpinning for the Skoda Enyaq, the Cupra Born and VW's ID range. As I've mentioned in previous videos, I'm something of an EV skeptic, but now having used this for the last 7 days, it's fitted into my world quite easily. This model's the all-wheel drive Quattro 50, which produces 300 horsepower. The Q4 range starts with the 35, the 40, then the 45, and then the range topping 50. The 35 and 40 models have a smaller battery pack, meaning less range. They also only have one electric motor powering the wheels, making them two-wheel drive. But the 45 and 50 models have an electric motor on each axle, making them four-wheel drive. They also have a larger battery pack, giving them a better range. Audi say the 45 and 50 will do around 320 miles. Now in the real world, as I've experienced, they'll do around 280, maybe 290. That's a pretty impressive range nowadays. 280, 300 miles would do most people. This will also charge from 5% to 80% in just 38 minutes, which is a figure most of us could deal with. All week I've just been charging this overnight on my driveway using a 3-pin domestic socket. I don't yet have a wall charger fitted, just a 3-pin socket for my Flymo, and honestly it's been fine. Every night when I walk through the door I plug it in, and then the next morning it's got enough range for my following day. If you don't have a driveway though, you might struggle. Every 2 or 3 days you'd have to find a public charging spot. Anyway, enough with all that boring stuff, let's talk about how it drives. Now just like all EVs I've ever driven, the acceleration is brisk. This has 300 horsepower, so it'll do 0 to 62 in just 6.2 seconds, and it keeps going until it reaches 111 miles an hour. In the real world, it's plenty quick enough for this for most people. I've always said with EVs, the rapid acceleration does make them a bit of a one-trick pony, but still, you can't help but grin every time you tap the accelerator. It obviously only has one gear this, so the performance is immediate. There's absolutely no hesitation whatsoever. In terms of styling, I haven't been able to make up my mind. Styling's subjective of course anyway, so my opinion shouldn't necessarily form yours. But here's what I think anyway. Sometimes I walk up to it and think, well, it's quite good actually, quite classy. It's contemporary and compatible with modern times. Then other times I walk up to it and think, it's got a bit of a stubby nose, hasn't it? And a dumpy stance. So yeah, I haven't quite made up my mind. I think overall it does look quietly understated and classy in a way which Audi always seems to manage. I do like the colour of this particular model though. Audi call it Pebble Grey, which is a no-cost option. It's almost like a Porsche Crayon Grey. I like it. They also make a Q4 Sportback with a sloping rear end, which I think looks a whole lot better. It's much sportier. I think if I were buying one, I'd sacrifice the slightly smaller boot for the better looks. That is a bit shallow of me, but there you go. Oh, there's one. Ah, that's a Sportback. That was good timing, wasn't it? Moving inside, it gets better. The choice of materials is lovely. Everything feels solid and well built. There are no rattles or squeaks, which is a good job really because there's no engine noise to drown them out. I love how they've blended the infotainment screen neatly into the dash. It all looks part of it, it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb. Something I really like about the interior is the fact that you get physical buttons for the climate control. They're not buried within the touchscreen system like so many cars are these days. Right, and we're on the bypass, so we'll do a quick acceleration test. I'm currently doing 40 miles an hour. Sting it. And there we go. Brisk. I'm currently sat here at the speed limit with my adaptive cruise control on, and it's nice and quiet, nice and refined. You do get a little bit of wind noise as the wind bounces off those big door mirrors, but I think that's unavoidable. Overall though, it's all nice and civilised. You could do plenty of miles in this. The seats are nice and sportive too. They've got the mixture right between comfort and sport. Something else worth mentioning is the Sonos sound system. It's superb. I also love the virtual cockpit, so with a touch of a button, you can change the way it looks. There we go. I've got my maps now on full screen. I also love the large, thin spindle steering wheel. Just feels nice to use. Although I'm not a big fan of the new badge. I know all new Audis are going this way, but it just looks a little bit cheap. You can tell it's been designed with some thought, this car, because there are loads of storage compartments. Take the doors, for example. They've got 3 door bins. There's loads of storage down here, 2 cup holders. It's all well thought out. The glove compartment isn't very spacious, but it makes up for it in other ways. And that is my adaptive cruise, bring me down to a gradual halt. I'm currently tethered to the Jaguar XF in front, and away we go. How clever is that? There are a couple of things on the interior which I don't like. For example, the gear lever. It's completely flat, and you sort of slide it forward like a chess piece. I don't like that, it isn't very intuitive. And there's no park button either, just reverse, neutral and drive. Instead, I don't know why they didn't use the same Phillips shave razor head that they use in all kinds of VW Group cars these days. That would have made more sense. I also don't like that the seats are manually adjustable. Just seems really cheap in what's quite an expensive car. The whole interior in general, as nice as it is, doesn't feel particularly luxurious. You know, this is an expensive car and I've got no panoramic glass roof, I've got no keyless entry, and I've got no electric seats as standard. Just seems a bit mean. I also don't like how much empty space there is here, and I preferred them to build this central area up and give me a proper gear selector and maybe a decent sized armrest. I just think they could have made better use of that space. On the bright side though, there is a lot of room. Plenty of headroom, plenty of leg room, plenty of elbow room. It's a nice spacious car, this. And it's the same story in the back. You could genuinely transport 5 adults. There's much more space than you'd expect from a car of this size. I mean, as the name suggests, this is smaller than a Q5, but it doesn't feel like it is. And then we've got some red lights. It's completely silent. My auto hold feature's switched on, so I can take my foot off the brake. You know what's funny, after driving an EV, when you get to a stop sign or some red lights in a conventional car, and you sat there with the engine idling, you just feel wasteful. For narrow European roads, this car's the ideal size. Just goes to show you don't need to drive around in something humongous. The boot's also quite capacious at 520 litres, and you can fold down the rear seats, which extends that space to around 1500. So size-wise, it would make the perfect family car. What's also good about the Q4 is that it sits a little bit higher up, so you get plenty of ground clearance. You needn't worry when you're driving over a rough road. And that also means that it's an easy car to get in and out of, this. Something else to point out is the visibility is excellent. There are no obvious blind spots. In terms of what it's like to drive, it is great fun, this, for nipping around in. You have instant power on tap, which will genuinely pin you into your seat, as I've just demonstrated. There's hardly any noise, and it does feel quite sharp and sporty. There's not much body roll, plenty of grip. It's all quite good, really. I mean, even on the motorway, it's all quite hushed. There's plenty of power for overtaking, and before you know it, you're at the speed limit. Even though this is the sporty S-Line model, the ride isn't too firm. I think that's down to the fact that it has quite a long wheelbase, so it absorbs the bumps nicely. It just means this can handle rough surfaces, potholes, speed bumps with minimal cabin intrusion. I can't stand cars with an overly firm ride, but this isn't. This feels nicely supple. One thing I've noticed though, which does take some time to get used to, are the brakes. Unless you select B mode, there's hardly any brake regeneration. And I mean, I suppose it depends what you're used to really, but they do feel quite vague and spongy. There just seems to be an awful lot of travel before anything happens. Let me just quickly demonstrate B mode. So it's in D right now. If I select B, it's almost like that one pedal mode you get in a Nissan Leaf. Not as aggressive, but eventually it will come to a halt. The steering's quite light, but that isn't really a criticism, it just means that this is quite easy to manoeuvre around town. Being a new car, this comes with a whole raft of technology, which is mostly welcomed. You've got Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which works wirelessly, thank God. This whole infotainment system is quite easy to operate, and it's quite quick to respond. You also have a nice head-up display system which kind of shows you the road layout up ahead. It comes up with a warning if you're getting too close to the car in front, and also if you start to stray out of your lane, the steering wheel will take over and correct it. You can turn that off though if you don't like all that nanny state nonsense. Something else this has is a speed limiter based on traffic signs. I've noticed this slowing me down as and when the speed limit changes, which is quite handy. I think if you were to own one of these, you'd keep a clean licence. What's more, the Q4 promises to be a very safe car. Not only have you got auto braking and things like that, but you've also got 2 ISOFIX points in the back, plus one on the passenger seat. It's all quite reassuring if you're planning on buying one of these to use it to transport your loved ones. In terms of the Q4's rivals, this will go head to head with its siblings which share the same platform. But I guess this goes up against the Tesla Model Y, which looks a bit funny, doesn't it? And also the Kia EV6, which doesn't. I could genuinely get used to driving this on a daily basis, and I think if you're considering buying a battery EV, then the Q4 should definitely be on your shortlist. All things considered, it's mostly good. I've mostly got praise for it. I say mostly because there are a few issues with it. The main issue I have with this car is the price. This specific car with £5,000 worth of optional extras comes in at a whopping 62.5 grand. Now I know things have gone up across the board, but this just doesn't feel like a 60k car. I'd honestly recommend saving a few grand and going for the 45 e-tron model, because you still get twin motors, so it's still all-wheel drive, you still get the same battery pack, so it still has the same range, and you still get 261 brake horsepower, which is plenty. Used prices here in the UK start around 35 grand, but that's going to get you a low-spec 35 model. Now at that price point, it does make sense, but at 62 grand as tested, I can't fully endorse it. Well, I think that's about it. So thank you once again for watching. Make sure you give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't done already. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'll leave a link below. And yeah, cheers guys. See you next time.